involved there.
Well, I think that's so true, and I think that all of us, we're all human, and we all are subject to this constant conditioning, desensitization, and there are things that used to just horrify me just even 10 years ago. They still bother me, but because I've been so assaulted by nauseous, disgusting, obscene, off-the-wall stuff through the media, activities that never would have even been discussed, I find myself, it just sort of slides off me like water off a duck's back. And
right.
This is tragic because it's not that I'm not going to speak out against it, but it's easy to understand what's happening with the average, say, middle-aged person or young kids in their 30s, 40s, who are so busy trying to, take care of their families and
right.
2 jobs and children sick, dogs sick, whatever, can't pay the mortgage. Obviously, they're missing a lot because there's just so much of this, and they must be turned off a lot anyway. And so
well, they've used this. They've used the media to desensitize people from almost all of the old value systems. I mean, let's start with. We can start with sex, and we can move into language, profanity. We can move into lying and cheating and non-accountability. They've used that medium to desensitize all of us from the values that we were taught as children. At least, hopefully, we were taught.
That's right. Yes, and I was thinking myself. Think ahead, in 50 years or 100 years, what on earth is our country going to look like?
I won't, if it's still here.
If it's still here, and, our country may well not be here in its physical form the way it is now.
Maybe
right?
not another 10 years, who knows?
Oh, yeah. I mean, considering what's going on now. But Americans really have being asleep at the switch. On the other hand, I refer to my my 7. It gets a little bit bigger. No, it's my 7-prong fork to which they've been exposed, and it's really this 7-prong devil's fork, and it's sort of easy for people to remember. They've had a tremendous attack through the government on the mental health attacking. Right. We're looking at that right now, where all Americans are going to eventually have mandatory screening, and if you can change a person's mental health, you can basically change their thinking. You can brainwash them.
Right. We just had a doctor on the last hour, Dr. Robert Carton, Ph.D., who was for 30 years a government environmental scientist with the EPA for 20 years and has been fighting the fluoride issue for a long time.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, very wise man. And talk about impacting the minds, brain functions, and psyches of hundreds of millions of people. The fluoride is one of the big culprits.
I would really have enjoyed listening to that because the Russians, he probably mentioned that. They've done a great deal of research on that, and of course, and they've used it themselves on damaging a particular part of the brain.
Right. There is one part of the brain, I've forgotten what it is, but the fluoride zeroes in on it. Just like depleted uranium takes a hike and goes and sets up shop in the pancreas. Yep. That's why we have a diabetes epidemic all over. Fluoride goes to a specific part in the brain and begins to diminish its function.
Well, and that part is the brain that would normally creates a sense of activism, a motivation to do something. And so really, it does sound sort of far out.
So
I think that has happened because what is this? We all discuss it, and you try to discuss something that is in the news that people most likely have heard about, and they look at you like you have 3 eyes and 5 ears, and they're just like, duh. Well, you and I have talked about this so many times, Jeff, and I must get really tired. You do radio all the time, every day, and it must become very tiresome to have to use the same script all the time. And maybe you probably don't have. Maybe you don't have to. I do, because whenever I speak, I have to discuss this pathetic reaction that we get from our good neighbors, and many of them are accomplished doctors, lawyers,
right,
etc., and they just can't. You talk to them, they can't absorb it. It looks like they're totally incapable of absorbing a sentence that 20 years ago,
right,
an 8th grader would be able to deal with and answer the question. It's something.
We're stuck.
Something
We're
has
stuck.
happened.
We're stuck here with an explanation. I think it's probably a multiplicity of things. A lot of them I can see intellectually immediately backpedaling for safe ground, which means don't engage this person.
I'm afraid
stay away.
Important.
I think the intelligentsia does that. On the other hand, I think that the majority of Americans now are no longer intellectually able and capable. I think they just cannot do it. They cannot involve with anything that really causes them to do objective thinking or subjective evaluation. It doesn't work for them. All they can fall back on are recorded messages and reflexes at best for the most part, and in the case where that is not accessible to them, they just disengage and walk away.
Yeah, well, it's very...
or they become hostile.
And they become hostile, and they become very boring. If I have to... I never thought I'd get to the point where I really don't care. I love people. I always have, and I still do. But I really basically have withdrawn a lot from the general community of people because I prefer to read and listen to music and go for a walk in the woods.
You've earned it, my dear friend.
Well, yeah, but you too, because, what a waste of time to deal with these people, nice as they may be, but they're just, what do they have to talk about? Maybe golf or the weather, but for heaven's sake, don't go out of those parameters.
I will not, and I'm not an elitist by any measure. I just will not engage in small talk. I can't do it. I can't do it.
I can't do it either.
And it sounds kind of neat, huh? Students are motivated. They'll be able to teach themselves, and let's free them. Let's liberate them from all these old, terrible curricula that are used to keep them down. Let's allow them to achieve their own independent brilliance. Maryland school, tell us what the school did. This is a mind-blower.
Oh, it's this... Well, that's why it is laughable. But the point is, as you said, no major newspaper would publish something like this unless there was an intention. Can you imagine my writing something and getting it published in the Washington Post?
Sure.
So they're very clever. They drop these little bombs occasionally that people sort of smile and laugh. But the point is that this is, again, what we're talking about, the conditioning of people. They see enough of this kind of thing. And actually, this is not totally new. This philosophy goes back to England, Summerhill, in the 60s, and very much John Holt, who was involved in homeschooling. Mm-hmm. And I see it very much as Professor William Glasser's philosophy, and he really was far off and is, and people can go and get his books. But anyway, fortunately, folks, it is a private school. The public schools haven't yet gotten around to getting rid of all teachers and allowing 72 students ages 5 to 20 to run the school.
Well, let me tell you. Hold on. I'll tell you, in a de facto sense, they're moving very firmly in that direction. The students do, in many cases, now run the schools now. The teachers are afraid of them. Mm-hmm, they're intimidated by them. They look the other way. Right. The curriculum is a joke. Even the students, who could care less about learning and the whole game, often mock the curriculum. And I said, what do you mean? And they tell me what they're being forced to study, and it is quite inappropriate in terms of an age maturity level in many cases. They've dumbed down the curriculum, as you well know, to the extent that it does offend even the marginally interested students.
Well, yes, so that reminds me of way back when I was on a local school board, and I was on the on the committee that selected curriculum and literature, et cetera. And I was so concerned about the selection of literature, which was just, On the Beach and all these very depressing books that were not necessary for middle schoolers and high school kids. Maybe a few of them, but they didn't even throw in a handful of T.S. Eliot at the cocktail party or C.S. Lewis or anything. Not allowed.
Can I say one? Please let me say one quick thing. I'm aware. I taught high school for 2 years, but that isn't it. The point is, I'm in touch with the local school system where I live, and I've Santa Barbara School. I've asked the teachers who teach English literature or whatever they call it now.
Yeah.
The book selections when I've heard about them, have left me stunned in disbelief. Who in the hell are these idiots?
Well, I don't know, and I must say that I did a lot of research on this, because not only did I do it with the public school, the school board that I worked on was elected to the board, but I did it when I went to Washington. I was at the U.S. Department of Ed. We had a little extra money, so we sent our children to a very elitist private school outside of Boston,
mm-hmm.
where the Kennedys went and all the other children of diplomats and the future world leaders. And I was absolutely appalled when one day when I was visiting, I went into the library and I saw all these horrible books, many of which I had complained about at the public school level. And I knew that they were having a lot of problems at that school with drugs and suicide and all sorts of things. Children from very wealthy families that were tragic kids, and they were smoking pot and drinking and et cetera. I knew that they had a lot of problems. And I had a meeting with the school psychologist one day it was in regard to one of my younger son who hated the school, right, and really wanted to get out, so he was getting in a lot of trouble. So I went to the school psychologist, who was a very good man, and we got into a lot of discussion, and I mentioned this to him, and I gave him a list of the books,
mm-hmm.
and he studied them. He said he was shocked himself. He helped me. We got rid of half of them.
Wow.
And he said, "You're absolutely correct that this kind of literature has a tremendous influence, bad influence, on students." So I became quite knowledgeable about it. And after the break, I want to just continue a little bit about the comment that the head of the English department made in the public school system to me.
Good.
Which
All
is
right.
a shock.
It looks like to me that they're simply foisting on these children the books they like. They don't give a damn about age appropriateness or interest or excitement. They're giving these kids books that clearly, in my estimation, the teachers had the hots for whatever reason. That was my read of it, anyway.
Well, I think that the American Library Association has a lot to do with book selection, and it is so far off the wall I don't even want to go into to discuss it. But also, the books get the Newbery Award and all these other awards, and people think when they get that award, then they get a review that sounds good, which doesn't really tell you anything about what's in the book. And so what happens is that they have committees. They used to have committees. Actually, our school board had a committee that had to do with selection of the books, library books. And then eventually that committee was phased out. But even at the time it existed, the selections were pretty much made, and then you were able to go in and pull out what you didn't like. But it's sort of like the superintendent would let us think that when we had a personnel committee that we really had a choice of the teachers that came before us, and it didn't take me long to figure out. I said to him, how many applicants did we have? And the superintendent had to admit that there were many that he had rejected, and we only got those. Same thing with books. We only got the teachers that he had approved in the first place to select, but that's nothing new probably to most of your listeners. But what was interesting here is we did manage to, the psychologist and myself, we managed to change the book selection. At least what I said is I just want half and half. I didn't go for the whole, right? Let's have half, which are really valuable, worthwhile books that the children are going to get something out of that will give them something for the future. and not be depressing, and for some children cause them to go on drugs or commit suicide. And we did accomplish that in this very important private school outside of Boston. But as far as the public school was concerned, what was interesting here was that they were just terrible books. And one morning, I called the head of the English department, who ultimately, he was really a very carefully selected fellow. He'd worked at Time magazine before, and he ended up working at some school in Ankara, Turkey. He was very internationalist-minded, etc. But I called him and I talked to him about this, and I tried to be nice. It was before he was going to work and before, at breakfast time, sort of. And he said to me, "Well, I don't understand what you're talking about." He said, "I don't think that what the children read really has that much effect on their outlook on life or what they." And I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Do you think, in other words, would you say that listening to classical music, Beethoven and Bach and Mozart, and et cetera, doesn't have any effect on a child's mindset and how they look at life and how they look at culture, et cetera?" And he said, "I don't think it has any effect whatsoever." Well, I really got pretty upset. I said, I said, "You're the head of the English department, and we're disagreeing here." Well, what happened was later on I got involved in a meeting, a social studies curriculum committee meeting, and I was sitting in there, and it was a small room. This is how they operate, folks. I had this in the Department of Ed, too. Whenever they wanted to go up against me, we'd have a meeting in a very small room. And but this particular meeting, the superintendent, the head of the English, the head of the English department was not there. Social studies department, because we were doing a social studies book, etc. And all of a sudden, the head of the social studies department attacked me. There were 5 of us, and said, "You want to hear what Charlotte did?" And then recounted the story of how I had called the head of the English. After all, I am a school board member, right? But anyway, I had called the English department, head of the English department, and I had ripped him up and down the wall, which I hadn't done. Blah 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 blah. And I thought that is what happens to you if you take a stand. Well, okay, so let's fast forward 25 years. I pick up, or I saw it on the internet, I guess, an article from some British newspaper, a big one, with the Economist, or I don't know which one it was, but something big. And it was an article how teenagers in England had mounted, you may have read this, had mounted were lobbying against the adults and the teachers in regard to the selection of books, because they were absolutely disgusted by what they were having to read.
I missed that one.
And they wanted some good literature, and they wanted this, and they wanted that, and they were fed up. And so I sent that. I made a copy of the article, and I sent it to this fellow I'm talking about, who I'd had a problem with 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just very politely said, "I thought you'd be interested in this. Do you recall the controversy in regard to books at our school?" I did not hear from him, and I know he lives where the address was. But 25. It took 25 years for the poor, and nobody can tell me that American students are any different. I don't think they want this. I also don't think that they want this dumbed-down curriculum. They want to be challenged.
Oh, sure they do.
And you and I were on a subject tonight, which we don't get into this extended discussion of what's going on in schools, and I think it's important because it's very easy for me to go right over that and into a discussion of why they're doing it, and that they actually want to totally destroy any semblance of academics or a possibility of children having upward mobility on their own, right?
Well, it's no wonder that kids are dropping out of school. It's no wonder.
Absolutely. I would, it's no wonder. It's no wonder that there are so many homeschoolers that are doing so well. And as I often point out, Wall Street Journal has said, about 2 years ago that not that the Wall Street Journal is anything I really desire to read anymore, but occasionally they'll do something on something like homeschoolers. The Ivy League colleges, the first applications that they look at are from homeschool students.
That's amazing. I remember posting that story, and it's really crucial to understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
Wow. I just would like you to tell me, is my daughter going to graduate in June with 4 Fs? Family would like to attend graduation. They have to come from out of town. Would you please just give me a call and let me know if my daughter is going to graduate? No return call. Nothing. Call somebody else, and they said, well, our policy is when a student is 18, you have no right to know what they're doing anymore.
Oh.
This is a parent.
Well, you know what? I mean, I've heard terrible stories that are similar to that, where students have been told that when they were 15 or 16 that they had a perfect right to leave home, and that their parents were, no longer really in charge. This was a friend of mine who was disciplining her son for very good reason. And she's a lovely gal, and he's about twice her size. And because he'd been told at school that about abuse by parents, etc. He reported her to the school, and the school said that he could leave home. They would take care of him. They'd pay his rent.
It was a public government school.
Yes. Actually, it was the community, the DARE program. Police told him that. Well, he turned out very well. I intervened in the problem because she's very close to. She's like a daughter almost to me, and it all worked itself out. But I will never forget it. He turned out to be an absolutely wonderful guy, and he didn't go on to college. They put him into the school to work thing because that's the way we're going nowadays. And he was doing very badly, too. He wasn't doing well with the academic curriculum. But now he's out, and I always used to tell him, don't ever trust the government. I really did get that through his head. And he is moving on with his own business, a hard worker, etc. But I recall that, and that doesn't surprise me, although it's absolutely shocking that the way they treat parents now, and parents have become a big problem to them recently. I just saw an article in one of the major newspapers about how the school's dealing with these nosy parents. All of a sudden, parents are getting a little bit more interested in what's going on in the schools. Jeff, let me give out my website again, because I want people to know that my book is a free download now. That's
amazing. I know you announced it last time, and that's remarkable.
And I know that 700 pages is a lot to deal with the computer screen, but you can learn a lot just by getting in there and go to the index first, because probably you'll find a lot of things there that'll turn you to separate pages. But the website is deliberatedumbingdown.com. And please, folks, go there. Tell people that it is a free download. And also, there is a link on that website to my new website, which I developed after I purchased the last copy of the Rense Committee and Cox Committee reports. That was the investigation of the tax-exempt foundations in the 50s, which was so abruptly terminated due to the White House and the foundations becoming very concerned that the American people would find out the role that they were playing in destroying our form of government and our way of life. And that committee those hearings were terminated, and they the foundations managed to scoop up all the copies of the record of the hearings, and I bought what I believe to be the last copy. And that's the main reason I devoted my time to doing the website was to get these two reports up. They are there, and they're very, very interesting for those who are interested in the main culprit, the traitors, who have continued to. Now, they didn't stop in the 50s. They've continued to, and they're right now doing it, and they're all involved with the amnesty program. You can be sure they're funding that, and illegal aliens. So that website is called AmericanDeception.com. And there's a link from DeliberateDumbingDown.com to AmericanDeception.com. there are many, many so far very important entries there, not as many as there will be in the future. The website is in its infancy, so bear with us if you have to scroll down and up and your eyes roll. But there's some very, very important entries there, and there's one particularly important one I want people to look at who think that school choice may be the way to go. School choice sounds good, but there can be no school choice except the one we've always had, and that means you pay, because the ones that the school choice proposals that the neoconservatives are throwing out there now, and the libertarians, ultimately, because they take federal money, including charter schools takes federal money, will mean that the private school sector that takes the federal money, charter schools, vouchers, any voucher programs, tuition tax credits, means that you will be exactly the same as a public school because you're federally funded. The tax money is federal money. And don't even take it if it's local tax money. I want to warn you. But there is an entry there that I want you to take a look at. And that it is called Iserbyt Memo to Schlafly. That's Phyllis Schlafly, Schlafly. And you will see there I was warning Phyllis Schlafly about the school choice proposals out there across the country. Very dangerous in the state of Washington. They were getting deeply involved in what we will look down the pike and we'll say, too bad we ever went this way, because they're starting the removal of our representative form of government, elected officials, through charter schools. And now people may say, what is she talking about? What do schools have to do with our representative form of government? A lot. Because once they remove the elected officials from our public school system structure, it will, all the different organizations in our community that are run by elected officials, the entities, will also have it removed, because the goal, and you'll see this on the website if you go to the major community education entries, the goal is to put all the services in the community, lifelong, this is the United Nations plan, under what? The umbrella of the school district. So you start removing the elected officials in the schools, and the whole thing is going to crumble, and we are going to be run by the council form of government, which is the Soviet form of government. Now, this may sound complicated, but it is all very well explained in entries at AmericanDeception.com. Go first to Iserbyt, Memo to Schlafly, and then another very important entry there that deals with this is called Failing Grades. Failing Grades. And that is out of Canada, and it's a video that I got a hold of that showed how they would have to use direct instruction, which is the Skinner method, talking about reading, but they knew, because it was involving themselves with the corporations, etc., and the conservatives in Canada and the United States. Failing Grades deals with charter schools, exactly what I'm talking about. These two entries will help you understand that you must go up against any form of school choice, and especially charter schools. And then you must, the third entry, and there's so many, it's hard for me to tell you what to go to, but the third entry, anything to do with community education. And there is one major study that was done in the 70s by two Wisconsin researchers, Ruth Feld and Jill Wilson. And it's called an expose of community education. Community education is nothing new about it. And it's everything under the umbrella of the school. It's been planned ever since the 40s. Mott Foundation out of Flint, Michigan. Okay? Be sure to go there, because what I'm talking about, folks, is the agenda for America. Now, you're saying, Charlotte's meant to be on here just talking about the schools and education, all right? No, education, the agenda for education is the agenda for the country in every single way. School to work, the Soviet system. the change of values, the Pavlov-Skinner system, punishment, rewards, conditioning, technology, computers, etc., faith-based initiatives, the government coming in and controlling, that would be the Christian schools, etc., giving them money, Christian organizations giving them money. Everything is there. School-based clinics. Now, that probably is the best example for all of you out there in terms of looking at lifelong system underneath the umbrella of the school district. That's the first one. Remember the big battle many of us fought to keep the school-based clinics out? Mm-hmm. What do they have to do with education? Nothing. But that's just one thing. They'll have leisure education. They'll have old people education. Take them to look at the leaves in the autumn. Everything. It's a process. It has nothing to do with education. It's a process of brainwashing. They get you at birth all the way through death. And I'm not kidding you. It sounds way off the wall, but it isn't. And in what we were talking about, that school that has no curriculum. Yeah. That is all part of it. And the book that I mentioned in my thing on that email, School is Out. You should go get that book, folks. It's written by Louis Perelman, Perelman. School is Out. And I mean, not enough, I guess, because we wouldn't have him in the White House if enough people.
Well, you got the election was a fraud.
Yep, absolute fraud. And the more I look at the situation right now, I mean, between, we're in the middle of a move, and my internet connection, the high speed, I'm trying to get it established out here in the so-called boondocks, which I love. Very, very beautiful on the river here in Maine. But so I'm really not quite as up to speed as I would like to be. But it's given me a lot of time to ruminate and think about where we are and why we are where we are. And I think I've discussed this in the past, but it still makes me the word sad is probably a good word. As a former, in quotes, true conservative and Republican, I really am. I think it is absolutely tragic what has happened to our country, and that the conservative movement was hijacked.
Oh yeah.
And by the neoconservative.
It's been hijacked, disemboweled. It's a joke. It doesn't exist as it used to.
No, and the greatest part of the tragedy is that I hold them more responsible for the demise of our great country and the loss of our freedoms than I do the left. And that is something that 30 or 35 years ago I never would have dreamt I would say. Because they are the Trojan horse. The movement was taken over, and I was right there, Jeff, when it started. It was in the early 80s when this started, with the Council for National Policy being formed, which the membership is all of the major players in the conservative movement. The Heritage Foundation, Paul Weyrich, Pat Robertson, you just name them, on and on and on.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, I kept, it was an interesting little period, because before I was appointed to the U.S. Department of Education as senior policy advisor under Reagan, my boss, the assistant secretary there, who had worked on the Hill, for Congress, for the Republicans, something or other, study committee, I think. He called me one night before I was offered the job, and he said, now, Charlotte, he must have been pretty smart, actually, this fellow. He's dead now. His name was Donald Sinise. He said, are you going to be loyal?
Mm-hmm.
Loyal? And I'll never forget that. I thought, am I going to be loyal?
Sounds like a Bohemian Grove statement.
What am I going to... Well, of course, I'm going to be loyal to the Constitution. And it was quite a conversation. It seemed that he was concerned that I was going to be as you called me, a whistleblower. And I said, of course I'm going to be. I got in, and then, of course, I found out that these very people that were supposed to save the country were actually doing it in. And, we had the U.S. Department of Ed was meant to go. It wasn't meant to go, right? It was not meant to go because the top people in the conservative movement were doing everything possible to see that it didn't. And when I was dismissed, and I wrote President Reagan in regard to what I saw around me and how shocked I was and how shocked I thought he would be if he knew. So I gave him all the information about what I saw in the Marxist factory, as I called it. And my letter, I know, reached him. Actually, my letter is on my website, which is now, it's available to everybody. The letter is right there to Ronald Reagan. After he died, I let it go public. I didn't want to do that before he died. I waited 20 years. Pretty nice of me. And I told him, and I never got a reply to that letter, and I know he received it. And after I went home to Maine, I contacted the White House, Ed Meese, who's also Counsel for National Policy, his office, and Ken Cribb, who's also Counsel for National Policy, did meet with me. I paid my way back to Washington, and they met with me, and I still was saying, why have I not got an answer to this letter? And Ken Cribb patted me on the shoulder and said, "Oh, Charlotte, aren't you glad the president read your letter?" I said, that is not my question. I said, I want an answer from him. Mm-hmm. Because without that, I can't say to the world that he ever saw it. And I never got an answer. It may be in the archives out in California. I don't know. But this was just the beginning of my seeing something that was very bad. And it later went on with Reagan signing the agreements with Gorbachev to merge the two education systems. And Human Events refusing, that I'd written for years, refusing to publish an article in regard to that treason. Although the Bangor Daily News had no problem publishing that article. And the story just goes on and on and on. I'm not going to take up a lot of time this evening with it, but it has become so blatant in our foreign policy, especially. It's just tragic that our country has been hijacked by these people, and
Charlotte, it's a coup. There's been a coup here. There's been a coup here.
But how many Americans, they don't see the forest for the trees? They cannot see behind these wars all over the world that we're involved in. Our imperialistic policy, that's really a nice word to use for a total aggression that we used to say was bad. Remember when it was the communists who did it? The people are just staggering around, and they may think that it's the Republicans, and they're correct, it is, but they do not know that it really is that the conservative leadership, the Heritage Foundation, multi-million-dollar think tank that drafted NAFTA, by the way, which is Marxist, they don't know that it's the conservatives who've done this, who've dragged our country down. And so, we've talked about it before, the right and the left, they have the same agenda at the top, and the Republicans and the Democrats, and that's the way it has always been. But I never dreamt that it could be the movement within the Republican Party, the conservative movement, the old Goldwater types, which it used to be, right, that would be called upon to sink the ship. And that's what I'm trying to say to people tonight. I hope that I'm sure none of your listeners would ever give a penny to those people. These are traitors, and there may be some of your people who still do support them. I don't know, but I would hope that after this interview, nobody will ever give another penny to them.
Good for you, my friend.
Filmed research of documents proving what has happened to this country, and actually going back, in some cases, 200 years. We've put a lot of time and money into this new website. It's called AmericanDeception.com. If you go to Google it, just write in American Deception, and it will pop up. And you will see what we've done there, and there will be sample entries so that you can read a few of the most important documents that we've selected to whet your appetite, because we are asking now the enormous, extraordinary fee of $15 a year to be able to get into this massive collection of documents and research, much of it written by subjects that on the occult, on the Zionists, on the Masons, on education, on religion.
Nice. And again, who's behind this site?
Who is behind it? I am.
It's 100% yours.
Yeah, it's 100% mine. Well, yeah, I'm surprised he should, having the mother he's got.
Well, that's why he put a little magnifying glass at the top of the page.
Oh, that's right.
So we can all just reach up there and use it to read the text.
Yes, he thought that was going to work. No, that's a good idea to do that. When people get in there, I don't know that he chose as a sample this one particular one. You have to be a member to get this one. But I wrote a memo about 10 years ago to Phyllis Schlafly.
Yeah.
And it had many attachments to it. And the attachments were unbelievable. They proved that the conservatives were out to do away with our representative form of government, put the council form of government in. They was very much involved in the promotion of school choice and how it's being used in Russia, and just extraordinary entry that is on that website if you become a member. And I warned her, and I said, be careful, this is very dangerous what's going on, and you will see all the documents that were attached. That's what's great with the internet. It's just, it's one little entry, but you get into it. It's called Iserbyt Memo to Schlafly. And that's just one example of what the conservatives have been involved in and what they're doing to us. And I really do hope that people will pay the $15, to get in there so that they can go, if not to all the other fantastic things, but certainly to that, because that's what we've been discussing this evening. That's a yummy website. I'm glad you went there, Jeff, and I hope you will try to promote it with your buddies and your listeners. I do want to point out one shocking thing about the Council for National Policy. And your listeners can go and find out about the Council for National Policy. Just type that into Google as well. But this group that was formed in 1981 by Tim LaHaye, author of the Left Behind series of books. But I understand that about half of the people who bought those books, or all of the people who bought those books, there were millions and millions who bought those books, voted for George Bush. But the early participants were Paul Weyrich, Phyllis Schlafly, Howard Phillips, Richard Viguerie, Morton Blackwell, and it goes on. These are all people that I knew well. That's why I say it's so shocking to me what has happened with this group. Now, and it goes. I've got a whole list of them here, and people can go on the web, and you will see the list, and it will shock you as well. But the point here, my son and I, same thing. About 15 years ago, probably, I came up with a little idea about getting out of the UN, and it would be a little postcard which would just in one paragraph explain that the UN was founded by communists and blah, 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 how much it cost, and asking people to write their congressman, because there was legislation at that time, to get out. And my idea was that people would have just always have on them a pile of these little cards in their pocket. They would put it in with bills they paid. They would send it with Christmas cards. The country would be flooded with these things. Well, I suggested this to Rosalind Haley, a wonderful elderly lady who it's the Crest department stores. She was important in conservative circles and a member of the Council for National Policy, okay? But she didn't understand how bad they were. And so she and I had this project that we mailed out to every single one of them. I think there were 300 members at the time. These are wealthy business people who supposedly are conservative leadership going to save America. We sent a mailing, and Sam did the whole mailing, basically, because he got the names off the computer. And we asked them to support us in this move. And actually, at that time, I think the Spotlight had a big edition on Soviet troops in the United States, that whole thing of military exchanges and all this stuff going on. So we included that in the envelope, and we said, we've got to get out. Please get on board. You are the leadership. Help us fund this massive movement to get out. Well, Jeff, do you want to know something? Guess how many responses we had?
Oh, yeah, here's the punchline, folks.
None. Okay, now, all right, I just thought I'd better point that out to the listeners because we didn't get one single reply. Now, what does that tell us?
It tells you everything you need to know about who these people are and who they work for.
Yep. And these are all the big names.
Yeah.
I mean, Richard Allen, when he was working, remember him?
Oh, sure.
He got fired because he accepted a wristwatch from the Japanese.
That's right. It was a joke. Right? Wonder why he really got fired. I can't imagine it was the watch.
He went over to the Heritage Foundation after to work, and you know who drafted NAFTA?
No.
Richard Allen.
Oh, well, there you go.
So,
wow.
if we haven't got the message across here, but do go AmericanDeception.com. Once you're a member, it's not one of the sample ones. I think I'm going to ask Sam to please make that a sample one. Sample ones are fun. I mean, really, you've got a lot of information there just with like Maureen Heaton's incredible book, The Impossible Dream, which explains how we went down over the past 50 years, starting in California with regional government and under Reagan. She was a brilliant, wonderful woman who died about 4 years ago, and I put her book up on my website because it never really made it into the mainstream because it wasn't published well enough. She didn't have enough money to do it, so it is on my website. And I believe Maureen's book is a sample. You don't have to pay for that.
All right, very good. Back in a minute with Charlotte Iserbyt. I'd like to ask Charlotte when we come back to look ahead a little bit and see where we are as we. Electronic voting now is utterly suspect. Utterly, totally, absolutely suspect. Simple. So, are the American people going to buy into this crap anymore, or do you expect a real major effort to stay away from the polls? I think people's frustration levels will drive them almost anywhere, and I think there'll be a fairly good turnout. There will be an overwhelming vote to the left, as it were.
Yeah.
Is it going to make any difference? All we have to do is look back at the Democratic Clinton administration, don't we, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah.
Do we remember anything about those horrible 8 years of death, destruction, lies, deceit, of giving away hundreds of billions of dollars of American technology and all the rest of it to the Chinese? Do we remember anything about that? Does it matter who's in the White House? Does it matter the horrors in Congress, what party they're in? No.
No. It doesn't. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever. And I think that the last presidential election was a perfect example of the lack of respect they have for our intelligence. When you have two candidates, both members of the secret society at Yale, the Order of Skull and Bones. That's just unbelievable to me. I happen to have, unfortunately, I'm not proud of it, but my family closely associated, father and grandfather, and I know that how they operate, and I know that they are the ones that pull the strings for world policy, no matter in what area, and that the American people would be given a selection between two members of the order when only 11 or whatever are selected every junior year to be part of that elite club at Yale University, and we have how many million people in this country, that to me is, I mean, if people don't understand what's going on when they look at that, they never will. It means that the game has been set at the top, and no matter who you vote for, even if that guy or gal has looked pretty good in the past, once they get in there...
Well, they either play the game or they get well stoned.
Yes, absolutely. They'll be out. And
they'll be dead if they really cause trouble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. And if, there's so much that I could say about what's going on presently and who controls who gets elected. I mean, the funding and all, and you could too, and we know. And it's a tragedy that we are now militarily engaged, as we are, and bombing and killing people. And we will continue to, because we're setting up bases all over the Middle East and protecting Israeli oil pipelines, et cetera. And, to me, that the American people are allowing this to take place. This is genocide. It is taking place in the Middle East. Perfectly innocent people.
Sure.
I'm not talking about the leadership. I'm not supporting Saddam Hussein. I'm
Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestinians in the West Bank, Lebanese, it doesn't matter.
And this is a Christian policy, and this policy is supported by people who call themselves Christians. That's an embarrassment in itself. I mean, I used to think it was great to be a Republican and then a conservative, and I don't dare say that I'm either one of them anymore, and now I don't even dare say I'm a Christian. Right. And I am a Christian, and if I understand the Bible correctly and the philosophy of Jesus Christ, what's going on in the Middle East doesn't have anything to do with that.
Of course not. Nothing. Zero. And you touched on something interesting. It is difficult for moderate, modest, true Christians to say they're Christians anymore because of the fanatical, maniacal Christian right. They don't want to be associated with that, and
it's an embarrassment.
It is. It's stigmatized instantly.
Did you ever believe 30 years ago that you would be embarrassed to be a Republican, a conservative, or a Christian?
No, but I watched what they did with the word patriot after the Oklahoma City bombing. They turned it into the dirtiest word in the English language in just a couple of weeks, and that should have been an object lesson. In fact, it should have been an abject lesson to everyone. The power of the media. That's
right, and then it ends up on the Patriot Act, which is the most unpatriotic act that ever passed Congress.
Again, it's all 1984. It's all words, it's semantics, and you reinvent the language to suit yourself, and you repeat it over and over again, as Bush said in that one speech. He said you got to launch the propaganda again and again. He says, in this business you got to repeat the truth. He said over and over again until people get it. What he's really saying, of course, is you got to repeat the lies over and over again until people get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard for me to believe that he's that smart to come up with that himself. It had to be Karl Rove or somebody else who's really onto psychological warfare.
Listening to his little earpiece.
Yeah. I mean, it's so here we have another election, and it's a tragedy. I just don't understand the American people. Don't they realize that they have children who are going to have to live under this system? I mean, and grandchildren?
They don't care. They don't care. Their children will live insular lives in their gated compounds, communities, cities, and they won't have to deal with it. They just want to. And after the next plague or nuclear war or whatever comes through and reduces the population by 75 or 85%, they'll have it even easier. They'll crawl out of their underground bunkers, come right back up, and carry on. The part that I don't get is why are they allowing their globalist, corporate, ghoulish brethren to destroy the planet, unless they know something.
Yeah.
Like it's all over in a few years anyway, which really bothers me, and I hope to hell that isn't the case. But these people are not stupid, and yet they're killing the golden goose. Now,
I agree with you. You should talk to my son, Sam. He sounds just like you. He keeps talking that way. Exactly what you said.
Well,
what is going on here?
There's something going on.
Know something different?
They have to. You don't kill, because successful parasites don't kill their host, right?
Yeah.
And these people are incredibly evil parasites. But they're not stupid. They manage, they manipulate, they socially engineer brilliantly. They've got supercomputers to play out models of whatever they want. They know within probably plus or minus 3 to 4, maybe 2 to 3, what the response will be, how far they can push the public, how dumb the public is, how much the public will accept.
Yeah.
They know. It's a science.
It is a science, and they've been at it for years. And I think, as far as population control, I guess they figure that they're going to reduce the population to 1 billion or something, where they will live, where they will have a very elegant lifestyle and own all of the land, and we will all be gone. And that was the Club of Rome policy, I believe. It came out of there, and when back in the 60s and all, when I would read studies like that, I just really didn't believe them. And it looks to me like the plans that they were making back then, and of course much further back too, but I'm talking about sort of what you're talking about, the Tofflers and the futurists and the skull and bones types, the Order and Bilderbergers and Trilateralists and CFR. These people, they don't seem to be very concerned about what they're doing. I think they figure they're going to survive very well, and I don't understand it either, Jeff. I don't understand it at all. And I'll tell you one thing. That's one thing I can't tell anybody. That I don't even want to speak on it, because I wouldn't want anybody to even dream about accepting anything I might have to say on that scoop, on that score. I don't. That's one segment of the most important segment of the problem that I cannot get a handle on.
I can't either. So that's a missing piece, a crucial piece of the puzzle. I don't know what fits in there. The options I have bother me. They're concerning. I don't know what they are. Don't know what they are.
Well,
you got no oceans left. They're dead. You got no rainforests left in a few years. The great forests of the Northwest are, they plant trees and all that, but they're still deforesting things. The desertification of the planet continues at an ever-increasing pace every year. The pollution of the planet is absolutely irreversible. Scientists said that the point of no return came and went in the mid-'80s. Some of the environmental scientists I respect the most. Yeah, now we got depleted uranium, which has a half-life older than the planet Earth, which is being spread all around the planet. Everywhere it's being used will remain deadly forever. That's it. So what are they doing? They knew about depleted uranium in 1943, and the Army wouldn't use it because of the very reasons we're talking about now.
Yes.
Our men and women are coming home. They're going to die.
Yep.
They've inhaled this stuff. How much does it take? Some people say 1 nanoparticle. Maybe that's all it takes. We don't know. But we're breathing it here in the U.S. now. It's all around the world, because the entire planet exchanges its atmosphere every 36 hours. Anyway.
Very depressing.
It is, but it's real. We can't get depressed and, we got to stay informed. We got to stay on top of this stuff. We have to try to help others understand as well. That's our most important assignment right now.
Well, I wish that we had a strong movement that hadn't been infiltrated. But the problem is, the minute you try to form a group, I know this, and I've always stayed away from groups for that reason. If
they're taken over. They're taken over immediately.
It's taken over immediately.
Yeah, and look at the individual. Look at the attacks on me.
I know.
Ugly fiction, lies.
That's right,
just
but that
crap.
means you're doing a good job.
Yeah, well, there'll be more. That's who these government agents are. Okay, my friend, thank you for doing all you do. AmericanDeception.com. Good luck with that. We hope it does really well, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. God bless. Bye-bye.
Take care. Good night. Charlotte.